Like, how am I going to make progress as white? Like, I can't, I don't really have a great spot for the knight, and he castles, and now I play g4, and he just tries to shut it down with h4. This game featured an aggressive and solid setup against a Philidor type of position, and it was an epic battle that went all the way to the end game. This is round 4 of the Newcomb Memorial Tournament in Dulles, Virginia. I just got back to my apartment, made the drive back to Pennsylvania here, and I'm excited to share this game with you. My opponent, well, firstly, I had white, and I'm playing against an expert, Mark Highland. He is 2043, and he plays c6 on move 1. So I'm expecting a Caracan. I'm like, okay, another Caracan. We're just getting Caracans left and right here. And then he plays move queen c7. And this is not the Philidor, but it basically transposes into one. And you'll see what I mean by that in a second. I play knight c3, he plays d6, I play bishop e3, and I'm doing the classic like knight c3, bishop e3, and this is the setup I'm talking about. Like against almost all the hyper modern stuff, or just like even just modern, even the modern defense, like where black delays taking the center, and they play like g6 or like c6 and like knight f6. Like I like to do this solid setup with knight c3, bishop e3, and f3, and that's what I do in this game as well. And he plays e5, so now it really is a Philidor with him, pushing this pawn to e5, d6, e5, and I guard this d4 pawn with my knight. I could take on e5, but this is nothing special for white. Like this pawn on c6 is doing such a great job restricting white's knight on c3, and black has easy development with bishop e6, knight d7, and it's just equal. It's usually not that great to take the pawn. It's better to leave the tension in a lot of cases. So I play knight g e2, guarding the d4 pawn, and after knight f6, I was actually really debating on which move to play, because I could play. Well, firstly, I don't want to like allow knight g4. Maybe it's not that good of a move, but it is kind of annoying. Like he can kick around my bishop, and like I said, maybe it doesn't matter at all because maybe I have h4 in some cases, but I definitely don't want the knight to go forward. It's usually generally useful to control this g4 square in this type of position anyways. So I was considering h3. Here, with the idea that if he like develops, let's say bishop e6, for example, I'm going to go g4 and bishop g2 and probably still castle short. I've done this type of setup before against the Philidor, and I was also considering f3 with the idea that like, okay, he could go here, I can go g4. And I can like really like this pawn on f3 supporting the center pawn and also supporting kingside expansion. And I'm going to throw the kitchen sink on the king side and probably castle queen side. And so I had these two options of f3 and h3, and I thought both were good. I'm very confident that both are good, but I just decided to just go f3 instead of h3 because I thought queen d2 and castling queenside, you always get fun, aggressive games. And he actually responds with h5, so preemptively stopping any g4 pawn push. And it's not so easy to make progress on the king side with this h5 pawn. I play queen d2, just continuing development, and waiting to see what he's going to do. He has not committed his king, and he's not committed most of his pieces. So sometimes you can kind of go wrong against some of these like modern Philidor type of positions when you commit your king too quickly and black hasn't. At least I found myself in trouble in some of these cases. He plays b5, and here would be a moment where like, okay, if I just stick to principal chess and just castle queenside, that's exactly what he wants. Like he's probably going to play b4, and I don't have a great place for my knight. This knight on a4 feels a bit loose, and it's on the edge of the board, but maybe it's okay. Because if like queen a5, b3, But really, I'm pushing pawns in front of my own king, and he's dictating the play. I don't even know if queen a5 is good at all. But like maybe a5 too. I'm not too sure. But this is definitely not what I want. I definitely want. I don't want him to play b4 with tempo on my knight, and my knight not have a great square back towards my king, back towards the center or the king side. So that's why after b5, I play a3. Nice waiting move. He's not going to commit to sacrificing a pawn if my king's not even on the queen side yet. He plays bishop b7, trying to develop his pieces like this. And I play d5. Yeah, I thought this was a really good moment to play d5 because he cannot take, because I'm just going to probably... Oh, wait, I forget what I was going to do here. I think I was going to take back with the pawn. And this pawn on d5 is actually very useful. You know, like, it's an isolated... Well, it's not isolated. I guess there's a c pawn. But it feels kind of weak on d5, like a bit overextended. But in this case, I think it's a strength because it's not so easy to attack this d5 pawn. Like, to add one more attacker to it, he probably has to go knight d7, knight b6. But that takes a couple turns, and in the meantime, this b pawn is hanging. And if he defends it with a6, and I get a castle queenside, now I have another defender on it. And I can even go knight g3 and knight g e4, and trying to remove a defender, remove an attacker on this d5 pawn. So it's not so easy if he does end up taking the pawn. So I think this is a really, really good moment to play d5. And more than that, I have a connect 4, which is pretty cool. And more than that, this diagonal is completely occupied. When was the last time you saw a diagonal like this? One of the long diagonals, you know, an eight square long diagonal like this, completely occupied. That's kind of cool. But he plays a6, and I take, and he actually ends up taking with the queen. I actually really like this because now, after I castle, he always has to be scared of playing a5 because of knight e4 tactics. Because I can play knight e4 here, attacking the queen and attacking the pawn. And if he takes my knight, I can play bishop b5, protected by my knight, and the queen is pinned to the king. And if he takes me, I can take him with check, and he can take, and I can take. And he has two bishops and a knight for the queen. But I got two pawns for all my business, and I still have targets, and I still have the d5 square. Maybe it's still roughly balanced, but he has to at least worry about this type of, he has to worry about this tactic at the very least. So I love seeing queen on c6 because the knight, because that's the most natural square for the knight. c6 is the most natural square for the knight. And the queen and the bishop, it's a battery. So, like, they're lining up. They're working together as a team on this diagonal, but it's staring into a brick wall. This e4 pawn is well guarded by the f3 pawn, which is well guarded by the g2 pawn. So, there's not really doing anything here. Me and Mark and I, we analyzed the game afterwards, and he said he wanted the open c file. So, he wanted the queen to have open scope on this file, and that's why he took with the queen. But I agree with him that probably taking anyway, taking with the bishop, taking with the queen, taking with the knight, they're probably all okay to do. But he does end up taking with the queen, and I do end up castling. And, like, so far, I have played extremely natural moves. I think d5 is the only move that that maybe someone who isn't very experienced might not play. But so far, I just developed my pieces, control the center, and then I push d5. And if he doesn't take, well, firstly, he can't push because this is another moment as to why d5 is good. Because even if he wanted to push, which pushing probably isn't that good. We were talking about it after the game where we were like looking at if he played a6 earlier, then he could maybe push c5 instead of if to meet d5 with c5. Let me say that again. So we were talking about if he played a6 earlier, then he could meet d5 with c5. And I was asking him, like, would you ever want to push c5? And he said probably not, because this d5 pawn is really suffocating black's position. Like, this bishop is very bad. This knight doesn't have knight c6, although he can still go knight d7 and knight b6. I wasn't convinced that it's super bad for black, but also as why, I mean, I definitely would. I do like this extremely. I do like this extremely strong center here. So I have no complaints on the white side, that's for sure. But because a6 isn't on the board yet, he can't even consider the move a c5 because it just hangs the pawn in this case. He plays a6, and I take. Yep, so we already ran over this part. And now he plays knight b7, continuing development here. And I go king b1. And here, like, what? How does white continue? Well, firstly, king b1 is always a useful move in positions where you castle queenside. One of the content creators for chess, Ben Feingold, always says, always play king b1, always play king b8. One of those motifs that's just like, yeah, if you castle queenside, you usually want your king further in on the towards the edge of the board. But more than that, I actually had an idea behind it. One of the issues with White's position here is that this bishop on f1 is really hard to develop. And actually, if black just sits there and waits, like, how am I going to make progress as white? Like, I don't really have a great spot for the knight. If I go knight g3, I'm like, okay, this actually kind of looks good. Like, I might even have the f5 score, but now g6. And what the heck is this knight on g3 even doing? Like, it's the pawn that's 3 squares in front of the knight. Does a really great job of restricting the knight's movement. And there's nothing this knight is really doing. It's guarding a pawn that's already super well defended by the f3 pawn. And maybe maybe this knight can even get attacked with tempo with the move h4 or something like that. So knight g3 wasn't appealing to me. h3, I did end up playing this later. I think that's a useful move, sure. But I ended up going king b1 because this move is useful in a lot of castle queenside positions, but also it opens up a new square for the knight c1. It's a backwards retreating move, but it allows it to reroute forwards to potentially go to b3, to a5, potentially, or to d3 and then b4 to help control the d5 square. So there's lots of ideas, because since black is doing a very not passive, but like a modern setup, and the position is slower and more closed, I have time to do these maneuvers because, well, black hasn't finished their own development yet. So I have time to do a reroute like this. He plays bishop e7, just getting his bishop off the back rank, preparing to potentially castle. And I play h3. So now I can meet castles with g4. And this happens later in the game. But he plays rook c8. And I don't rush with g4 because now, if he takes, now he can take, and I cannot take back with the h-pawn because my rook on h1 would be hanging. And so I don't want to rush with g4 if he hasn't castled yet. And I play knight c1. So I'm continuing with my plan of rerouting my knight. And he castles, and now I play g4. And he just tries to shut it down with h4. And this is where I make the first move that I'm not proud of. I play bishop g5. And this is by no means a bad move. It is absolutely not a bad move, but it's not the best move, I don't think. Like, I don't like using an engine for most of the recap until at the very end. At the very end, we're gonna have a game review section where we turn on the engine. But I like to just use my own thoughts and hopefully we both learn something along the way. But bishop g5, I think I rushed with that move. I think the better move was queen f2. Queen f2 does multiple things. One, it attacks the pawn, but I'm not really threatening the pawn yet. And it also teams up with the bishop. So the queen on f2 teams up with the bishop to prevent anything going from the b6 square. If you're thinking about it from black's perspective, what do they want to do? They want to play knight b6. They want to play knight b6 and then maybe go knight to c4. Maybe the knight on b6 will help support the d5 pawn break to help open up black's position. If black can get in d5 here successfully, like in most positions like this, this is very good. And when I say most positions like this, if you actually look at this position, um, after d5 and I take on c6 and he takes back, this is like a Sicilian. This is like a Sicilian. If we think about the pawn structure here, white has this open half open d file, black has this half open c file, and if we just start over real quick and we said let's go for a Sicilian type of thing, um, we can like something like this. We see this half open C file, half open D file. This is one of the coolest, transpositions I've seen. And Mark was telling me after the game that that's the cool part about this opening, that it can transpose to a lot of different types of openings. And in this case, it's a Sicilian. Anyways, let's go back to the real game. So I think I went with bishop g5. I think queen f2 is better. So it stops the knight from going to b6 because now the queen and bishop work together. So the knight would be hanging if it went there. And it attacks the h4 pawn, but of course I'm not threatening to take it. For example, rook f d8. If I take this h4 pawn, he has potentially knight d4. No, knight d5 doesn't work. Yeah, maybe it is okay. There are some discoveries like this like this could happen, and the queen is under attack, but like queen takes. I'm not convinced the sacrifice works at all. It does look a little bit scary though, but I think white should be doing just fine here. Oh wait, the bishop is under attack, so probably bishop here. Yeah. I'm not super convinced this works. Oh, but then you get more material back. Oh, this isn't so simple. Oh, this isn't so simple for white. Okay, yeah. But I would have to calculate discovered attacks against my queen if I did take the h pawn. Also, he could play rook e8 instead. So now after takes, there's this, and now the bishop's guarded by the rook, and white is just losing here. But here, if he did move rook d8 or rook e8, I would not take the pawn immediately. I would throw in this move g5, force the knight to move, and then I can take on h4, and I'm simply up a pawn. And this knight doesn't have a great square. It really doesn't. It really doesn't have a great square at all. And if you go back here, if I went g5 immediately, then he has knight h5, and the difference is that after queen f2, now he gets his knight to g3. This is not what I want. This is not what I want. The knight already got to g3, but if I start with queen f2, now he can't play knight h5 to knight g3 because his pawn is still here. So that's the difference. That's one of the main differences. So I really regret not spending more time here and playing queen f2. If you watched my round 3 recap, I got too low on time and I made stupid decisions. So that's why I was kind of trying to pick up the pace and use my time wisely. But this was not it. This was not it at all. That being said, the position is still great. That being said, bishop d5, and I still have a good position, but I think queen f2 was even better. But maybe it wasn't. He plays rook f d8, so there's an x-ray on this from this rook to my queen, and so I have to be careful of that. And also, this rook on d8 could potentially help support the d5 pawn push. This pawn from d6 to d5 after the knight moves. So this rook on d8 is probably well placed. I played knight b3, and this is where Mark said I missed my opportunity. Here, I was actually a little bit scared about my position because I didn't like how loose everything was. If I move this knight, if he gets in d5 successfully, if I move this knight and I move this queen, then he can take on c2 with his queen, guarded by his rook, and I'm going to like lose my rook on d1 or maybe even get checkmated in some cases. And I didn't like how this pawn on c2 was only guarded by my queen, and I didn't like how my bishop was only guarded by my queen. So it felt like my position was kind of loose. And I was really worried about I was really worried about like hanging something. And in this position, I did not think knight d5 works because after knight takes, I cannot take the bishop because the knight rotates backwards and I lose a piece. He has 3 minor pieces. I have 2 minor pieces. And if I take with the pawn, then I was like, oh man, he can take my bishop attacking my queen, and after I take, he takes here, and this is really, really bad for me. But what I didn't realize in the game was that after pawn takes and bishop takes, I can play pawn takes queen, and if he takes my queen, I take his bishop, and if he takes my knight, I take his rook. So I win the capture chain. And after all the dust settles, I'm up a rook. Like, or I'm up a piece earlier. If he like takes back now, for example. Actually, he can't take back now. Yeah, like if he moves his rook now, for example, I'm just up a bishop. That's the detail I missed. So he said he was absolutely crushed in this position. So that's what Mark was saying. But I messed it up. I didn't realize how good knight d5 was. I knew it was a move. I actually thought, but I didn't realize it was that good. If the main thing about this is that white has to be careful not to hang the c2 pawn. So if I went like let's say a random move here, and let's say I went queen e3, that would hang this pawn and subsequently hang this d1 rook. So as long as white doesn't hang that, then white is doing great here. They have great control of the d5 square because of this tactical shot, and white is going to eventually win this h4 pawn that is overextended and impossible to defend. Black's counterplay on the c file looks kind of scary, but maybe white can even play rook h2 to help guard on the second rank. Like, white is absolutely crushing here, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I played knight b3 instead, and I actually thought I was still doing good here. And I actually thought I would have a very, very pleasant position after knight b6. Well, in this position, I was still considering, like, oh, can I play knight d5? Definitely not now, because he has such good control of it. And if I don't do something quickly, like, black is going to be better. Like, if I don't do something right now. Like, I have to do something right now, or else black is better. Because they're about to, like, if it's black to move again, they're playing d5, and bam, all their pieces are super active. My bishop is still on f1. My rook is still on h1. It's not super clear that white is doing good at all. But I have a way to simplify the position and get into a decent, well, maybe decent might be exaggerating, but an equal endgame. And it goes like this. Well, it will start, and it's forced. And it starts with knight a5. Knight a5, queen c7, and I took here. And I was debating on whether or not to take. Oh, well, actually, I knew I was going to take here. But here, I really wanted to play g5, protected by the queen. It forces the bishop back. And then I was going to play rook g1 to try to jam in g6. And I think I'm doing good. But I couldn't get behind this move because of knight c4 attacking my queen. And I guess I could take, but maybe pawn takes like this. And I was like, is my attack really getting through here? And I was a little bit scared. I can never push b3 because of this pawn on c4. There we go, knight a4. He can attack my knight with a queen here. Although in this case, now I'm threatening mate. So I guess he has to be careful. Like, maybe after g6, does he have to take? I guess so. And then he could, like, defend like this with the bishop. Maybe something like that could occur. I'm not 100% sure. But it looked really, really scary. But looking at it now, maybe it's not so bad if I just take the knight. Maybe it's not so bad. But I was really worried in the game about this position. And if I don't take the knight, and if I play like queen f2, for example, well, now b4. And this is bad news bears. This is not good news gravy. Because, like, what are you supposed to do as white? If you take the pawn, now mate in 1 is being threatened. And like, the knight can move. And then maybe even they could sacrifice the rook. And, like, I think white is absolutely losing in this position. So I really wanted to play g5 and not trade more pieces, but I couldn't justify it. It just didn't look good enough. So I played knight d5. And he has to take my knight, because if he doesn't, plays knight c4, for example, then I could take with check and play queen h6, and I am attacking. I am destroying black's king side, and white is doing very good here. So he has to take, and then I take, and if he takes my queen now I'm just enjoying a very pleasant endgame. It's going to be, well, maybe not pleasant. Because I guess he could play rook c5 right now, and I can't defend it with my other rook. Maybe like bishop d3 maybe, and he can either double up or just take my rook immediately. And yeah, this is just an equal endgame. Opposite colored bishops, one rook each. Like, if he took my queen on d5, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. But the issue is, well, he didn't take on d5. He played queen b6. And I still think objectively this is probably around equal, but black, I think, is playing for two results here. They don't really have anything to risk. I think they have a really nice, they can easily improve the positioning of their bishop, and I can't. Like, my bishop is trapped behind its own pawns. The black pawns do a great job of restricting my bishop's scope this way. I'd love to go, if I could teleport my bishop to d5. Now we're talking about more mutual chances, but I wasn't so convinced in this position. And I have to move now, but I don't really see a great square for my bishop. Do I really want to commit my bishop to d3 already, to e2? It's not super obvious. I come up with a neat idea that I'm very proud of. Rook h2, guarding along the second rank. And after bishop g5, so now I can't go rook d2. That was his idea. That was one of his ideas. And he's also rerouting his bishop to potentially go to e3, potentially d4, or maybe even just to f4. Now I play rook g2. And if he gets lazy, I got chances. Like, for example, bishop e3, g5. If he doesn't play g6, I'm playing g6, and white is cooking. Like, for example, bishop d4, g6. The pawn's pinned. If you defend the pawn, then I can probably just play bishop d3 and double up my rooks on the g file. Actually, no, I can't double up my rooks on the g file because of this bishop here. But maybe I can go rook g4, rook takes h4 if he allows me to. And definitely white has counterplay, that's for sure. And white doesn't have anything to worry about. But he's not going to allow that. He plays rook c5, kicking my queen out. I don't really have any great squares for it. I just go back to b3, keeping an eye on this diagonal. And he doubles up his rooks on the c file. So he plays rook dc8. And I play bishop d3. So he's keeping his bishop on g5 because it prevents me from moving my g-pawn. He doubles up his rooks. He's kind of improving his pieces to the maximum before allowing me to do anything. I may just play bishop d3 because I don't really have any other useful moves. I don't really have any other useful moves at all. Not much really else to do. And he plays a5. And here, I had an idea to play a4 or c4. Like, firstly, I don't really have any useful waiting moves. I could slide my rook over to e2. Sure, I could do that. But then b4 happens. And is this really what I want? Not super convinced it is. Getting the open a file. Now he can slide both rooks over. And this bishop on g5 is cutting off my king's escape. And this pawn on c3 restricts my position a lot. For example, I guess I could play... Well, I can't even play c3 now because of... Wait, the pawn's pinned, actually. Huh. Yeah, maybe c3 is so scary. But somehow it's actually not that bad right now. Somehow it's not that bad. Maybe queen a7. Maybe rook b8. But if I can trade, yeah, it's still unpleasant, but it's probably still holding for white. So yeah, maybe I didn't have to worry about b4 at all, but I thought I did in the moment. Instead of waiting for him to play b4 or a4, I play c4 myself. Just if I can get my bishop to c4 and my bishop to d5, that would be really, really great, ideal scenario. But of course, here after he takes, then I wouldn't be able to take because the rooks are guarded. Rooks guard the c4 square really well. But in this case, there's this pin. So if he does take, then the queen on b6 is hanging. So that's why c4 or a4 is really good at this point, because this queen on b6 is undefended. So he can never take and open up this b file because my queen is attacking his queen. And he plays a surprising move. He plays queen c7. Oh, he plays a4 first, forcing my queen to move, and then plays queen c7. And I was really shocked by this because, like, I mean, I know what he's doing. He's creating winning chances for himself. So the idea is that this pawn on a4 restricts the white king's movement and can lead to mating nets. And I'll show you what I mean right now. So firstly, he just gives up this pawn. This pawn can be taken, and it's well defended by my bishop and my queen. And the whole point is he has the gun, Alekhine's gun, on the c file, and he uses it. Rook c1, rook takes, queen takes, and he infiltrates. So that's his idea. For the cost of one pawn, he infiltrates a white's position. But not just any pawn though. It's a passed b pawn, and I can start running this guy down the board. And his idea is to go queen d1, and he's going to play rook c1 and make it an unstoppable checkmate. For example, b6, rook c1, b7, checkmate. And if you try to get out with a move like b3, it's too little too late because check here and mate. So yeah, like queen c1, sacrificing the c pawn to infiltrate and play queen d1 is very, very whatchamacallit, it's very, very resourceful. And here, I was calculating for a while. I was like, oh my gosh, I can play b6, giving up my bishop, and then I can play b7, and then he can go here, and maybe I can go here, and he can't go here because of this, and I win his rook, and it's pretty good for me. But then I was like, oh my gosh, you dummy. If I go b6, he's just going here, and I just lose the game. And I'm just lost. There's no way I can stop checkmate. He actually told me that he thinks one of the easiest ways for me to give up, or for me to get a draw, is to play rook c2. Attacking his rook. And after rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes, I'm just down a bishop. But the idea is I play b6, queen c8, b7. No, actually after queen c8 to guard the pawn, I take this pawn. And if he tries to wrap around to attack this pawn, or if he plays queen d8, or bishop d8 to attack this pawn, then I can play b7, attacking his queen, threatening promotion, and he's forced to take, and I can take, and this is going to be a draw. He said he thought I should have played rook c2 here. Rook c2, sacrificing the bishop, allowing me to just push my b pawn to victory, except not a victory, to a draw, which in this case, he's a higher rated player, and I ruined my advantage. So yes, I don't mind a draw at all. I would love to have a draw. So I absolutely ruined it. I ruined it. I could have played rook c2 here, and it probably would have led to a draw because his bishop doesn't have enough time to wrap around and checkmate on b2. And even if it did, my queen on the b file defends b2 really, really well. And I just have this passed a pawn that he has to sacrifice his bishop for, and we're just going to get an equal queen ending that will most likely be a draw. But instead of rook c2, I play bishop c4. I'm dealing with rook c1 in a different way. I'm putting my bishop here. But now he plays bishop e3. And I calculate a really, really awesome variation in my head in this position. I play Well, I calculated b6, bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes bishop, queen d8 check, king h7, queen takes h4. It's almost perpetual, but it's not because he has king g6. Then I have queen h5 check, king f6, queen f5 check, king e7, queen g5 check. If he plays f6, I have queen e2, queen d2, I mean. And if he plays f6, I can play queen takes g7, check. And if he goes, and he cannot go king e6 because of queen g8 check. And after the king moves, I take the rook on c4. And if he goes king, and he can't go f8 when his king is on e7 after queen g5 check because of queen d8 checkmate. And if it goes king e8, I still have either rook d2, or queen d2. And I was really, like, I really thought, like, this has to be a draw. Like, after b6. And that's what I played. I played b6 here. But he actually told me that, like, he said b6 is probably still holding for white. My opponent, that's what he said. But it's probably the hardest way to try to get a draw. And yeah, I guess I was kind of tunnel visioned by this idea. Like, what I really like about this idea is that if it works, the game is simplified. And like, it's really hard. Like, we trade off bishops, and his king is in the center on e7 or e8, and like, and yeah, I mean, like, I'm just doing pretty well, and I don't think I even have some winning chances maybe. But the issue is that it ended up not being the easiest way. He told me alternatives could have maybe been queen c3. I'm still keeping the rook locked out of the c file, and I'm attacking the bishop. And if Mark plays bishop d4, for example, maybe I can play queen d3, attacking the queen. And where's the queen gonna go? Or maybe I can even play queen d2, attacking the queen. And if he takes the pawn, I can play rook f2, and I'm attacking the f2 pawn, or the f7 pawn, I mean. So it's not so easy for him to make progress after queen c3. But like, queen c3 didn't even cross my mind. Like, I'm pinning myself. Oh, also another idea of queen c3 is that if a move like bishop d4, then so you can sacrifice the bishop and you win the rook on c8. That's the other idea. So actually, yeah, like bishop d4, we don't play queen d2. We play bishop takes f7. Um, but yeah, like queen c3 didn't even cross my mind. And yeah, I apparently I didn't spend enough time to think about it. I mean, we were both getting kind of low on time, but I just really thought this b6 idea worked, and it worked well. But it doesn't really. He plays everything I said earlier about the line of playing b6, and we trade bishops, and I go queen e8, queen d8 check, and I take the pawn, and he goes up. This all happens in the game. And I even play queen g5 check, and he goes king e8. And now this is move 39. Time is ticking. I have like 5 minutes. Time is ticking. He has 3 minutes. Time is ticking. What am I gonna play? Once I make move 40, I get an additional 30 minutes, but I have 5 minutes to make a move. And I'm thinking, and I have between rook d2 and queen d2. If I just play a random move like h4, for example, then rook c1, and I'm still getting checkmated on a2, because he's going to go to a1 with his rook. And so I have to threaten a trade. And yeah, that's kind of just how the game's going to go. And in this position, I play the losing move. I have two options: queen d2, rook d2. And I decided to play rook d2 because I actually thought, wait a second, if he gets lazy, like, I'm actually going to win. Like, rook d6, rook d8 checkmate. Like, he actually has to be extremely careful here, because who's attacking who? Call an ambulance, but not for me. And And so yeah, I played rook d2 here, but it loses because of queen c1, pinning the rook to the queen. The white queen has no checks. There are no checks in this position. So there's no way for me to get out of this pin. And if I do, and I played h4 in the game, and he played rook c6. And my original intention was to play queen e3. But he has the nasty move, rook c2. And I cannot take his rook because my queen would hang. So my intention was rook e2. And if he takes my rook, I take his queen. If he takes my queen, I take back with my rook. But he has checkmate. I'm like, oh my gosh. After rook c6, I have no moves. I literally have no moves. And in this position, white is busted. White is lost. Like, it's so strong. There's no move. And even if white could pass the turn, it would still be losing because of queen c4 check and queen f1. And the rook, the square on c1 opens up for the rook. So white is absolutely busted. I completely miscalculated. I completely missed. Like, rook d2, queen c1, and h4. I'm like, I'm good. No, I lose. The queen can go to c1 with check and then back to the back rank. So I play the only move that I thought worked was rook f2. So now if queen c4 check, the f1 square is covered. But here's the issue. After queen c4 check, if I play king a1, queen d3 happens. And the rook on f2 isn't really doing anything. It can't defend the back rank because of the queen. The queen has vision on it. If queen e2, then... Oh, wait. Wait, does this actually hold? Queen e2... Here. Now I can go back. Oh, but then you lose. You have to be very careful. Maybe you can wait a bit. Like this. Yeah. Yeah, maybe king a1 is drawing. I actually thought king a1 wasn't drawing. I had two options here. King b1 or king a1. And I blissed out king b1. And it's like checkmate in 6. Because of queen d3 check. King goes back to a2. Queen b3 check. King goes back to b1. And then queen d1 check. King a2. Rook c1, and I resigned. This is how the game ended. And because I can't... Like, no way. Does king a1 actually hold? I'm actually going to turn on the engine a bit for this part of it. And yeah, king a1 holds. You have queen d3, then queen d2. And white holds. Yeah, I missed it. Yeah, I missed it here. Yeah, that was tough. That's tough. That's tough. I thought king a1 still lost, but a bit slowly. So I had the choice between king b1 and king a1. And yeah, I lost the game. I can't believe king a1 holds. I thought it didn't. Dude. Oh my god, that's so bad. That's so bad. Oh. But yeah. Overall, the opening went really well. Like, I had a very, very good position. I think I played really, really well. I got a really great position, but I failed to pounce. I failed to pounce in this position. I miss knight d5. I cannot miss a move like knight d5. I shouldn't miss those types of moves. And after that, okay, my advantage is gone, but we trade off into this end game where I'm not worse. Just I'm not worse. I should not lose this end game, but he outplays me. He creates chances. He does a beautiful job sacrificing a pawn to create a chance to win, to create some chance to win, giving me opportunities to mess up. I miss another idea. Rook c2, securing a draw, pushing my passed pawn. So I miss a winning idea. I miss a drawing idea. And then here, I miss. This is still drawing. This is still drawing. But once again, I missed the idea. Queen d2, much better than rook d2. But apparently, rook d2 is still fine. I thought this was losing, but it's still fine. And here, the critical moment here, I had time to think about it. I had like 25 minutes on the clock because we reached the second time control. I had time, and I fumbled, and I just played king b1, and I lost, and I lost the game. And yeah, that's that. That's that. I think it's good way to end it. I will see you guys in the next one. Okay, actually, I have to give my reaction. Wait, no way. There was another chance here? So after here, it's +2 with the move bishop e2. No. Queen c3. Okay, his move is +2. Because bishop c5 is forced to guard against the discovered check. And then I can play rook c2. And then if king and what is like rook c7, for example, bishop e2, and his queen is misplaced. He can't even go. He could go here, for example, right? Queen takes, e takes, rook c4, attacking his pawn. Okay, and if he tries to defend, I can go e5. Okay. Yeah, this isn't so easy for him. So queen c3 was a winning move. Okay. I just had to check that. I just had to check like what was happening, and there are other chances too. There's other moments where wow, like what the engine found some crazy things, but I'll check that out on my own later. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later.